Hello, good day, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're tuning into this broadcast. My name is Riel. This is a segment of Dose of Rielity, a new and growing podcast, vlog. I haven't quite figured out the specific term for it. Basically, I'm just making videos. Um, Today's date is March 3rd, 2022. And I want to thank everybody that's been tuning in to these shows, as well as my segments on Generation Z. Thank you so much for that community. Thank you so much to Dave for giving me a platform and everybody that's been supportive and encouraging me to share the information and research that I've been compiling over the past little while. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. And let me just share my screen. Right on. Okay, so today we are going to be starting off by looking at an article that mentions how Theresa Tam, there we go, sorry, computer's just a little slow. Okay, so thank you for that. So I'm going to be looking into the article from February 25th, 2022 that talks about how Theresa Tam is warning that the public health mandates could return, but she favors a lighter touch in the future. Okay, so what's this all about? Why would she be telling us about being prepared for more restrictions and mandates in the future? Well, so as the article says, Canadian governments should be ready to resume public health measures if another serious variant of blank emerges, even as they scale back mandates for masks and blanks. The country's chief public health officer said Friday. For the record, I'm the one that's I put these black strips here because a stream that I did recently was removed for medical misinformation. So I'm going to try to avoid certain buzzwords. Let's just see how it goes. Several provinces have announced plans to put an end to restrictions, signaling a return to normalcy now that the O wave is receding. As Jason Kenney, the Alberta Premier, says, we cannot remain at a heightened state of emergency forever. We have to begin to heal. It's very nice. Theresa Tam says that Canada is past the pandemic crisis and now is in a transition phase, heading toward a recovery. All right, so quick notes is I wonder if this transition phase is at all connected to the new normal that Heather Stephenson mentioned in the press conference where she announced that CV passports are being lifted. There could be a connection there. I love that Jason Kenney is actually saying beginning to heal. I don't know if that's legitimate, but I don't know his definition of healthy and healing, but that's at least a nice term because I don't know if you're even allowed to say healing because you can actually get sued by certain medical industries and pharmaceutical stuff. That's very complicated stuff. But anyway, now down here, we talk about the weekly case counts are down by 26% nationally, Tam said. But what I want to highlight here is that many jurisdictions have restricted molecular tests to people at high risk. So if anybody has listened to my video about the PCR tests, we explore how there is the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act, which prohibits people from being restricted services if they refuse to undergo molecular tests. So it's called the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act. It's a federal law. I have slides. I will just remind everybody about this. And it turns out that the PCR test is a molecular test. So I wonder what kind of tests we will be going through in the fall to determine whether or not somebody is diagnosed with this certain virus. Of course, we have her saying that even though masks will soon no longer be mandatory in many parts of Canada, Tam said they are still a fundamental layer of protection and urged Canadians to keep wearing them. Even people who choose not to cover their faces shouldn't throw their masks in the bin just yet. They should be at the ready in the event another, more dangerous blank evolves. And I wish that I had actually gotten an article that shows how much garbage is being produced from masks. It's appalling. I personally pick up masks all the time when I walk down on the street. And of course, she says the term shouldn't throw their masks in the bin just yet. Well, it seems like most people just throw them on the street. But, okay, so I am looking at this article and we are going to be reviewing from the past 2 years how we even got to this situation to begin with. And I'm going to start with in Manitoba, January 2020. So let's go back to the past as well. YouTube, please don't censor me. I am censoring myself, blocking out keywords. I'm trying to play nice while still sharing the information. Thank you. So of course, as I received the news that Theresa Tam has warned Canadians to get ready for more variants and restrictions in the fall of 2022, let's take the time to review what we have been told since the beginning of the PMIC of CV. So of course, let's start with January 2020. What happened to the flu? As well, remember that the RT-PCR tests have never been able to identify infectiousness nor transmissibility of a virus. Now that video that I made is still up because it's not medical misinformation. It is completely legitimate and accurate, and I will show you this. As well, now it's more controversial, has it ever been isolated to begin with? We're going to look at that as well. Maybe I won't get into that too much today, but that's probably going to be reserved for more BitChute videos and Rumble, less so YouTube. Okay, so beginning January 4th, 2020. Surge in illness prompts Winnipeg Health Authority to activate the flu plan, ask staff to pick up shifts. The subheadline, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority officials says increase in respiratory illnesses, including the flu, driving capacity problems. In a statement, WRHA Chief Health Operations Officer and Chief Nursing Officer Krista Williams said a surge in respiratory illnesses, including confirmed flu cases, has played a large role in overcapacity. Interesting. So again, January 2020. In an internal memo, WRHA sent to staff obtained by CBC News, Williams and outgoing WRHA President and CEO Réal Cloutier said there have been confirmed cases of influenza A, B. You know what? I'm actually going to write that name down because I have not explored her yet. Réal Cloutier. Sounds similar to my name, but that's just a coincidence, I'm sure. So Réal Cloutier said that there have been confirmed cases of influenza A, influenza B, and respiratory syncytial virus at the same time. She says to have all three viruses surge at once is unusual. Most years, each virus starts and peaks at a different time. The memo said that WHRA and hospital leadership are including partners from unions, the province, and EMS in incident command discussions. So January 7th, 2020, surgeries may have to be canceled. Patients moved elsewhere, says Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. Yeah, we've got comments from the Manitoba Nurses Union President Darlene Jackson that says the government, health authorities, and nurses, other employers need to shoulder the responsibility of ensuring safe staffing levels during flu season. Quote, the flu may be exacerbating capacity issues, but it's not to blame for the situation as a whole. And it's something that happens every year, she said in an email. January 8th, 2020, with Winnipeg hospitals crammed, NDP blames dwindling number of ICU beds for patient crunch. Wab Canoe said, through a Freedom of Information request, the number of available ICU beds in Winnipeg has steadily fallen from 73 beds in January 2017 to 63 beds last July. On Tuesday, the WRHA said it currently has only enough employees to care for 58 of those 63 beds. So we had staff shortages and we had bed shortages and we had hospital overcapacity limits, January 2020 from the flu. But the WHRA said the decline in the number of ICU beds, which is for critically ill patients who need consistent monitoring, is intentional. So they intentionally reduced the number of ICU beds. Interesting. WHRA. Now, where was that name? Real Cloutier. So the WRHA, Real Cloutier, CEO and president, outgoing. So she's no longer there as of today, March 3rd, 2022. I'm going to look into her. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go to an article from January 12th, 2020. Winnipeg struck by three influenza strains. Health officials left scrambling. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says that some patients may have to be sent to hospitals outside of the city for care due to the volume of people affected. So they were sending people outside of the city for care due to the volume of people affected. Now, they had only enough staff for 58 beds, but they had 63 available beds, but they previously had 73 beds. However, in this article, it also says that there were 113 beds in 2019, but there are currently only 107 beds in Winnipeg for the most seriously ill patients. So those are two separate numbers. You've got the 107 beds for the most seriously ill, but then you've got the 58 beds for the ICU. And you've got 3 flu strains. So again, we have another one, January 10th. Some surgeries to be canceled at St. Boniface Hospital after influx of flu patients. Hospital says patients will be contacted directly, possibly rescheduled at other facilities, from CBC News. Now, this is where it gets interesting, is because January 14th, 2020, a pair of young Manitobans die from the flu complications, families say. The chief medical officer says deaths of otherwise healthy people are tragic but not unheard of. A 17-year-old high school student and 24-year-old woman have died in Manitoba from the flu, according to their respective families. I'm not going to mention their names, but you can feel free to pause this article and read it and absorb the information. And if anybody knows anybody that is affiliated with this group, that'd be interesting to learn about what they are saying now. So doctors have concluded this was caused by the type A influenza, Clark wrote. And I know I said I wouldn't mention the names. That's just what the article says here. And they wrote this on their Facebook account. And we have the Chief Public Health Officer, Brent Rusin, quoted as saying, "We do see every year young, healthy people who can get the flu and have serious outcomes." Rusin said the province is seeing the spread of both type A and type B influenza, although influenza type B has seen more often and, quote, at much higher levels than we normally see for this time of year. The deaths of blank and blank have not been officially confirmed as flu-related by Manitoba health officials. So they did not officially confirm it by health officials. Interesting. However, this flu season, which started in September, so September of 2019, would that be right? September of 2019 is when the flu season started, has seen one lab-confirmed flu-related death, the province says. Okay, so I wonder if this lab-confirmed flu-related death was in 2019 or in 2020. The death was reported to Manitobans in early December. There we go, there's the answer. But no information on the age or gender of the person was provided. However, during last year's flu season, so of 2019, 17 people died in Manitoba. So if the one lab-confirmed flu-related death was reported in December, that would make it of December 2019. Okay. Now, here is where we get to the pandemic that we're still in. One of the first articles. I've got a lot of articles about this, and this is one of the first ones from January 23, 2020. CBC explains, do I have blank 19, the flu, or a cold? That's the headline. Which one do I have? What to do if you have symptoms and are worried you've been exposed to blank? Public health officials that believe the rate of blank cases in Canada is going to get worse before things start to get better. Notice how they say public health officials believe the rate of blank cases in Canada. So the rate of cases is going to get worse before things start to get sick. And what is a case? Well, that's the PCR test. And what does the PCR test show you? Essentially nothing in the sense of what they are being used to show us. What are the symptoms? Unfortunately, the symptoms of blank are very similar to the seasonal flu and even the common cold, so you may not know whether or not you are infected. Blank. The symptoms can include all of these above here. Okay. And of course, we are also getting the heads up that loss of smell could be a symptom of the alleged scratched out word. Of course, not everyone will present with symptoms. The only way to confirm blank is with a lab test. Symptoms may appear as soon as 2 days after exposure or as long as 14 days after exposure. What should you do if you have symptoms? Just stay home. Definitely don't go to a hospital, says Dr. Andrew Morris, an infectious disease specialist at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. The quote is from Dr. Andrew Morris, "The hospitals like the worst place for anyone. Other than people who are really sick and who will need hospitalization, just being infected with a viral infection is not a reason to go to hospital." So here we have a graph. The symptoms, all of these symptoms, you have 3 different categories. You have the word that shall not be named, you have the cold, and you have the flu. So look at how similar they all are. Okay, how is it diagnosed? Right, respiratory samples are processed by provincial labs. The labs may screen for other things first, such as the seasonal flu. The sample will only be sent to the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg should further testing be required. And this is highlighted because the National Microbiology Laboratory has a lot of relevance in the global situation regarding a lot of stuff that I'm not too sure if I can really talk about on YouTube, but I have the documents for it and would love to go over that with everybody here if they're interested. I'm sure I'll find people that are interested. So, of course, the key is maintaining distance, etc. We remember that we were being told that. What if my child has symptoms? How can you avoid infection? Okay, will a mask protect me from catching? So, in the first article, Teresa, the first article we're analyzing today from February 25th, 2022, Teresa Tam is telling us about masks. Got to wear the masks. Doesn't matter how many jabs you got to wear the masks. That's the way to stop everything. However, remember that early on in the outbreak, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Teresa Tam, said that wearing a mask when you're well is not an effective measure for keeping yourself safe from infection. However, the science advice has changed. The science and advice has changed. And advice. Now, just interesting with the research I've been doing into stakeholders. Where is the advice coming from? Now, okay, this is very interesting, and I will be elaborating on this in a future presentation with the whole getting denied for EI because you are terminated for misconduct. And I've got about a 40-slide presentation that I wrote specifically for somebody that's trying to argue against Services Canada, explaining that it's totally illegitimate to be denied EI for refusing a voluntary experimental injection, and how that constitutes as just cause for termination. Because the employment minister, Carla Qualtrough, said that the advice that she is being given is to make sure that you do not get entitled, that you are not entitled to EI if that's the reason why you are fired. So my big question for that whole situation is, where's the advice coming from? So, of course, let's continue. April 6th, Tam told reporters that wearing a non-medical mask can help stop the spread. Now, she also says, the science is not certain, but we do need but we need to do everything that we can, and it seems a sensible thing to do. Wearing a mask could give people a false sense of security that encourages wearers to relax physical distancing. It can sometimes make it worse if the person puts their finger in their eye or touches their face under the mask. Now, here's the foundation, the point of this presentation, because December 26th, 2020 is when this article is from. And let's just do a review, because maybe my counting has been wrong, and maybe my sense of time is warped. Maybe I'm in a temporal bubble. Time is something that's always been a struggle to me, because I think of time as cyclical, less so linear. So let's just review. On a calendar, first month of the year, you go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So January is the first month of the year. December is the 12th month of the year. The first month of the year, as I just want to show you, pair of young Manitobans die from flu complications, January 14th, 2020. December 26th, 2020, Manitoba finds its first flu case of the season, and the low incidence believed to be due to blank measures. Yeah, I bet it was due to those measures. Manitoba has found its first and only so far case of influenza this season. Now, let's also note that this was written by CBC News. This was not written by a local journalist. This was written by CBC News themselves. So it's coming straight from CBC News. And what is CBC? Well, I'm going to go into another presentation. Another presentation about CBC and the funding that they've been receiving from the government over the past couple of years, because it is a taxpayer government-funded operation. It is a government-funded source of information. It's the equivalent of RT News. RT News is the Russian government's source of information, and CBC News is the Canadian government's source of information for their public. However, during the week of December 6th to December 12th, the province confirmed a single laboratory case of influenza B. Manitoba Public Health declared on its website. At the outset of the blank pandemic, officials feared hospitals would be forced to contend with an influx of both blank and flu patients. As of Thursday, so of the week of December 26, 2020, as of Thursday, Manitoba hospitals are treating 340 blank patients and 0 flu patients. So here I have a mix of multiple articles from December 26th, as I've been saying, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, but I think it's very important that we understand we've got to, break through this goldfish mentality of forgetting what we were told last week. So this is, I know it's over 2 years ago. So we got to look at just under 2 years ago, I suppose. Just over. Haha. So Manitoba finds its first flu case of the season. Of course, low incidence believed to be due to blank measures, December 26th. So now, January 14th. 2020, 12 months later, 12 months earlier, we have people dying from the flu. So what happened? We also have another evidence from CTV, January 12th, Winnipeg struck by 3 influenza strains. Okay. And we know that those 3 things were the cold, the flu, and blank were very, very hard to distinguish from one another. So let's just do a little recap of the PCR test. Remember that this is from my previous presentation on the PCR test, which is still up on YouTube, because it's not medical misinformation, because it is literally explaining and reviewing what this test is, which it is a molecular COVID-19 test, which, just before I even dismantle what the PCR test is, it's a genetic test. It's a molecular test, which is potentially, you can be convicted on indictment to a fine of $1 million or imprisonment up to 5 years if you are found to prohibit, if you are found to refuse a person services because they refuse to undergo the genetic test. So, genetic test means a test that analyzes DNA, RNA, or chromosomes for purposes such as the prediction of disease or vertical transmission, risks, or monitoring diagnosis or prognosis. So we know that in Manitoba specifically, I think it was going to be here, from the legal trial in Manitoba that happened on May of 2021, Manitoba confirmed in court that the tests in Manitoba use a cycle threshold of up to 40 and even 45 in some cases. And now what does that mean? If the test is calibrated at 40 to 45, well, according to Anthony Fauci, it means that if a test is at 35 cycles or higher, it's just dead nucleotides. And the COVID test, damn, I said it. And the test is useless and misleading when the test is run at 35 cycles or higher. So just want to put that all out there. I'm disappointed that I caught myself, or that I said the word, but you know, it is what it is, and hopefully I didn't go too overboard with the information here right now. But also to just emphasize that as well, the test was only authorized under the emergency use authorization up until December 31st, 2021 in the United States. And of course, we know that, well, actually, a lot of people don't know, but in Canada, we had the interim order. The equivalent of the American emergency use authorization was the interim order. Now, I wonder if I have information about that easily available. I don't know if I will be able to find it so quickly, but that's something that I'll be looking into in the very near future, because that is very important that we discover that. And, you know, this is just another funny one. So this is just a little insight into all of my slides, as, you know, maybe you're a first-time listener. But yeah, I've got this document of 164, another of 350, etc. But the interim order, let me just go back to the interim order. That was what was passed in Manitoba to allow the medical devices to be sold. That's how the boop boops were allowed. That's how all of the tests were allowed. So that is another thing to look into. And that was signed for a one-year deal, and then it was amended and extended to another year. So I think that it actually is going to be setting to expire in this March 2022, but I will confirm that for you in a future video. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. This was Dose of Rielity. I hope you found this informative. I am so grateful and thrilled that I have any listeners. I love that the subscriber count is growing. Thank you very much. Feel free to comment. Feel free to reach out to me on Telegram. Again, you can find me. This is Dose of Rielity. You can also find me at Generation Z Podcast on YouTube, and on the Generation Z Patreon account. I have been doing weekly presentations where I am diving deeper into understanding the ramifications and the context of the pandemic itself, and looking into the global octopus of world control, or Mr. Global, as Charlie Robinson says, and then as Catherine Austin Fitts says. So again, thank you so much, and have a blessed day. Peace and love to you all. Thank you.